everyone. I'm working on today is day 15. I'm Anna Tracy, and this is the Bumblebee and Me with a hashtag 30 days of Bible journaling praise. We are working from 1 Kings, and the verse is going to be 8:56. And I love this verse just because of how it pulls out who God is. It says, "Blessed the Lord who has given rest to his people Israel according to all that he promised. Not one word has failed of all his good promises, which he spoke by Moses his servant." And we can rest in God's promises. I mean, that is really something that we could take to the bank. If his word says something, then we can believe it and act on it. So that is something to praise him about, isn't it? And what an encouraging thing. So when he says, "Trust me," it's not like a trust like, "Okay, God, I'm trusting you," yet you're still worried about it. We're resting in it. We have full assurance. I mean, you think about when you sleep well, it's because there's nothing bearing you awake, keeping you awake at night. There's nothing worrying you that your body can't rest perfectly. So that really is what came to my mind. And we are going to use this cute little set by Newton's Nook. And Newton is sitting on a pile of blankets, resting. There's a couple of sentiments. It says, "I love you more than naps," and "May all your dreams come true." This is not being sponsored by Newton's Nook, but it is a stamp company that I have purchased from. So I really love what they do. So we're going to start there using this stamp. And I'm going to show a little technique called masking. So we're just stamping it. I'm going to use some VersaFine ink. We're going to do some watercoloring techniques here. And I already took a little Post-it note pad and stamped Newton on here and cut it out. So now I'm going to try to figure out where am I going to lay him at. And what I want it to look like is a stack of blankets, and Newton's laying at the top. So that's what I'm going for. And my head gets in the way, I'm sorry. But I do need to make sure that I am lining it up correctly. So I'm going to put that down first. And just go over it. Now, when I did this, I was only stamping the bottom portion. And my reason for that is because I didn't want to get more of it. So as I go up a little bit with these blankets, stacks of blankets, I'm just going to be aiming for that bottom portion. And my reasoning is because you see, I want to leave no line there. So it looks like when I put it on again, that there's no line. That's the reason behind that. So if we get that right there, and then there is that poor part of it, we just are going to, and I did touch down, so I'm just going to go ahead and stamp. Now, if there's a skip in it somewhere, what I'm going to go back in with is my Pitt pen and close that little gap right there. So I have hit my fingers lots of times. I'm using VersaFine Black Onyx ink. It works really well for watercolor techniques. So I'm going to use a couple of different types of techniques here today. So one of the things that you want to make sure that you do when you're using VersaFine technique, that you are going to be letting it dry well. And the reason for that is because it's a pigment ink. It lays on top. So you want to make sure you let it dry well. And the next one, I am just going to stamp right on top of it. So I'm not going to worry about it using that mask. And I kind of think of the Princess and the Pea laying on. So I'm just stamping it up. It's a really nice part when you're using something like a clear block. You can see exactly where you're stamping at. So I have black ink on my finger, so if you're wondering, like I said, that pigment ink will take a little time to dry. And I already prepped the page yesterday with some absorbent grounds, and I might not have showed you in the past. The brand is Golden, and I bought it at a local art store. So that art store has since closed, so I wouldn't be able to get it from there again. I'm going to use my 1.5 Faber-Castell Pitt pen, and even though it's a fat one, that's okay. I can just lightly draw in those lines that I need, so then that way it can kind of just look like the blanket has been laying there. So looks like there's a bit of a lean to it, but that's okay. And my reason for doing this is so I see where I have my stack of blankets and my Newton. So then what I'll do is work over here in my background portion, let it dry, and then come and color in these stack of blankets. So that is where we're at with this, and we'll come back to you here in a minute after we let this dry. So this is now dry, and we are going to add color like I mentioned in the background area. I have two different distress inks. I have Faded Jeans Distress Oxide, and I have Black Soot. So those are the two types. The oxide is different than the regular distress ink. The oxide tends to be more opaque, and the regular distress inks are more translucent, so you can see through them. So we'll see how they interact. It's kind of an experiment here. And when I think of resting, I think of napping or sleeping, and if I'm sleeping, it's at night. So kind of going with the darker theme in the background. I am just using, if you have a craft mat, you can use that. I'm just using a piece of plastic with some white cardboard behind it. So then that way I can just smush my ink on there, add a little water, and I keep my trusty little bottle of water by my side, and I have a little brush right here. So I'm going to go in first with the Ranger one, the Faded Blue Jeans. Okay, and just kind of smush it, as you can see there. And we're going to spray it good, get some liquid going. Now we could do two things here. We could either do, oh, you probably don't know if you can see this. It actually was spraying some of the ink right onto the side here. You might not be able to see this, but you could take a piece of plastic and do ink smushing, but because I want to control it, I want to use this. So that's what I'm going to use. And it looks kind of like a milky blue. So I'm going to just kind of dab it. And I want to so the streaks that you see in the paper are no mistake. It is from when I was putting on the absorbent grounds. It has a texture to it. Now the reason that I use the absorbent grounds is because if I don't, it really will pill up this paper, especially with all that I'm doing today with this. So I definitely didn't want to be limiting myself. Now I'm going to switch to a bigger brush, mainly because it's just I'm doing a big territory here. So you can use a white plate for your pellet. You can be using all kinds of stuff. So don't feel like that just because this is what I'm using that's what you have to use. So like I said, if you have a craft mat, wow, then use a craft mat. I just don't happen to have one, and I've used this one in the past, so it works out well for me. Both sides of the Bible underneath this page as well as the opposite page is covered in wrap, so it's being protected. And I'm just going to keep going down. So I'm going to keep this process going, and we'll be back in a minute. So I've smushed black, or not black, sorry. I've finished off my Faded Jeans blue with the oxide, and now we're going to see how does black soot actually work with the oxide inks, because the black soot is just regular distress ink. So that'll be the interesting little test to see how does it do. And again, it's more of a translucent. Now, if you do not have say, oh, you know, say if you said, oh, I don't have that particular type of plastic, please do not let that stop you. You can get a plastic bag and stick a piece of construction paper in it and use that for your smushing and watering and watering. You're watering your page. I don't know if it's going to grow though. But I'm really liking this. It really has a pretty kind of color. So the gray and the blue, and now the because the oxide ink is more opaque, really covered up that white really well. But because the black is not opaque, you can kind of see through that. You can really see through actually, and really get the color of that blue underneath. So that's what you're getting there. And once I kind of flip my brush over, and that way you can see all of it. And I'm going to smush some more and a little more water there. And it's kind of a trick to make sure you do the same amount, because you want the color to be the same, right? I mean, that would be the goal here. So, and if not, well, we can always add in darker. Can't go lighter, but you can make it go darker. So I can make it go darker down here. That's not a problem. As you see, I'm moving my brush around back and forth, so I just try not to get too much of a same look. So, and my plan is to use a white pen on top of the dark once it dries, because you're not going to see a dark pen on top of dark. So that's really my plan, in case you're wondering, how am I going to do my actual journaling portion? That's my plan. We'll see how it works out. I'm not sure. I've never done it before. Now here's the other part to that though. If I didn't have a white pen, say, well, I don't have a white pen, what am I going to do? You could maybe try like a whiteout pen, see if that would work. A white gel pen, see if that would work. Now, if you don't have any of those, what I would suggest is just to get a piece of paper and use some washi tape and tape it in the crease and then do your journaling there. So that would be the other option. We're going to let this dry, and then I'm going to color in the blankets with Newton, and then my journaling will be last. So we'll see in a bit. Welcome back, guys. I am working on coloring Newton now. So we have here the stamped out image that I did. I did get some paint in it. Now, if you didn't want to do that, you could always mask out Newton and all the blankets, or even just the edges, so when you were coloring, you wouldn't get some images water. Now, because I used distress inks, they might lift a little. It'll be interesting to see what happens here. So I'm going to start with Newton, and I'm going to use gray brown. So, and I have an aqua brush here, and it's a fine tip, so it's really teeny tiny tip, which is nice because little areas like the ears and paws, you don't want to have a lot of work to do. So now, generally speaking, from my experience regarding these Kuretake brushes, they really work well with Bristol paper. That's usually what I use it on, and my success has been with Bristol paper. So this is kind of an experiment for me, because Bristol board or paper is smooth And the Absorbent Grounds is not smooth. So if I'm not seeing what I like, I might go back to my watercolors. I just kind of like the idea of having a little bit more control, but if I don't like the final product, I might go back. So we will see. Now you can tell that it is the water that I have put into it because it's really dark, but it is moving around. The ink is moving around from the Zig brush, so that's good. And it's probably because of the Absorbent Grounds, and I don't have to worry about the pilling because of them as well. So I'm just kind of going in those areas that were darker, lifting and coloring down here by his face, his or her face, depending on what you want to call it. Now it is blooming out, this ink, so you can see that. So the color I chose was a gray brown. It really looks more gray than brown to me. I'm not sure how it's showing up on the camera. I'll see later, but it really looks much more of a gray brown. Now the blankets, I am going to do them in alternative, and I'm going from top down, so then that way I'm not like doing top up and transferring the color that way. So usually with using these Kuretake brush markers, you're going to want to go from a small section and move on. You don't want to do a large section. And just from my brief moment of moving over it, I did not see it move at all. Oh, it's just trying to scrub it a little and with my brush, and it picked up. It's picking up, but not tons. So I will go back to working on Newton here when I think he's dried up, and add in the little pink nose and pink ears. I did get a pale pink out of my markers, so I will be using that then. And still, I'm just kind of moving from small spots and filling in, getting in the color. So I'm trying to not have too many harsh lines. So, knowing. Now, I do see it starting to pill, unfortunately, but so it is paper, and it is, again, this is a very thin paper, so just keep that in mind. So even if you're putting the Absorbent Grounds on it, it doesn't mean it's not going to pill. So we're just getting the paws, and then we'll get the tail in. And I was sharing yesterday with my husband this entry and how interesting it is that we have different things that we do, like maybe a Bible verse that you read and you really feel like God's speaking to you on it, and then you come back to it and you're like, wow, it had even more meaning than what I originally thought. And I was telling him how that was really the case with this, that here I was preparing these verses, and really just felt like, wow, I just keep getting more and more from this time with the Lord, and focusing on Him and what He's done in my life. And it doesn't mean I need to take a lot of time every day, but spending time and quality time with God in the morning is so important. So I'm going to let that dry. I will not work on this pillow because it's right next to the cat and it just will bleed in some more. I was able to kind of scrub that out a bit, so I might be able to do the same with a couple of other spots. And the other colors for the blankets, I'll show you what they're going to be. This is the pale pink. Whoa! And I'm going to do carmine red, violet, pale green, turquoise green, light blue, and dark oatmeal. I think I pulled out one extra color, so I'll come back when I'm done, and then we'll go over just what I'm going to journal. So maybe you want to take time to think about what is it that you're going to journal in your book, and maybe what did you get from this verse today. So I look forward to seeing what you guys got. Okay, so I'm going to use my Sharpie paint pen, and it's something I bought in a kit. It came in a kit, but you can also buy painter's pens this way. You usually have them behind the door, and they have them in different nibs. This is the fine nib, and so is this one. So I'm going to, it is water-based, so we'll see how it reacts to this Distress ink. And I'm just going to write Rest in Him. It's not showing up. Look at that. So actually I'm going to move to a darker color. Glad to see that. Now, if you're wearing something really nice, be careful. These paint pens will, they will stain your clothes horribly. So, and I'm just kind of priming my pump on here, making sure it has ink in it. It is not writing super well. I'm going to have to go over and over it again, but I'm going to write Rest in Him. And, you know, I will tell you, there really cannot be anything better than resting in the Lord. So, to trust in such a way that you can just rest in Him is awesome. So I just am amazed at that idea, and giving over to Him my day, my time, and believing that He says who He is to be true, and that is why I can rest in Him. So if you appreciated learning some techniques and what not to do, because boy, this really bled around, but it was fun to do. I love the colors. I loved how the colors turned out. Then you can go ahead and give me a thumbs up down below and subscribe to see more videos. I will be bringing more along your way, and it is a true joy to be on this journey with you. So today is day 15 that I am doing, and look forward to seeing what's going to come on day 16. Have a great day. God bless. Bye-bye.